It's a bit of a grey day today, so I thought I'd introduce you to the greenhouse rather than being out and about in the garden all over the place today. I did manage to get the shredding done, by the way. In the end, it eventually stopped raining and then I shredded it. And it's amazing, that giant pile of shredding that was sitting in the middle of the garden, a pile of logs and twigs and things, they shredded down to like 4 bucketfuls of chippings. So yeah, got rid of those in the edges and they'll mulch into the soil eventually. So that was pretty good. Okay, so yes, greenhouse. Well, not really a greenhouse, more of a conservatory. It's just there. There we go. And Dad used to sit in it and watch the birds rather than plant any plants in it. But when I started working here and started doing the garden and things, I thought I'd use it more as a greenhouse because I ended up with a lot of cuttings last year and I didn't really know what to do with them. And I had absolutely no clue whether it was going to work, but I thought if I leave them outside, it definitely wasn't. So I thought I'd start off and see how I could use that as a greenhouse. Towards the end of last summer, maybe in the autumn or something like that, I can't remember for sure, I was, obviously a lot of people were coming round here to look after Dad and so the front garden was getting very full of cars. And this brachyglottis that was underneath the front window was growing pretty much out of control. It was best part of 2 meters deep away from the wall, and so it needed cutting back. Dad assured me that you could hack it back and it would eventually just grow. And he suggested that maybe I could stuff some of the twigs into the ground and yeah, maybe they'll grow. Well, it was starting to get cold, so I thought maybe I'll do that in the greenhouse. I had no idea what I was supposed to be doing with these things, so I just did a quick Google on how to take cuttings and decided that semi-hardwood cuttings was probably what I wanted to do. I don't know what that means, or didn't at the time, but semi-hardwood cuttings was what I wanted to do. So I took various snippings off the end of this brachyglottis and stuffed them into pots. And amazingly, they've pretty much all grown. Over the winter, they didn't really do a lot, although almost all of them looked like they were still alive and kicking. And but now it came to spring. They've all started sprouting and started growing. So I've transplanted a couple of them. I think you'll have seen a couple of them in various videos as I looked around the garden the other day. They're out in flower beds and tucked into little spots down by the sheds. And when I took them out of the pot, they had rooted so well. It's amazing. So yeah, I was really impressed with this. This is pretty much 100% hit rate. I think one of the 20 that I cut, one of them hasn't thrived, and I think that's pretty good going really for a first go. Although, to be fair, you're probably going to tell me that brachyglottis is pretty much impossible to get wrong. But it was a good encouragement, which is nice. It's nice when you take a cutting, you do something and it grows and turns into a plant, and then you end up with more of them. So yeah, that to me, that's what it's kind of all about. Obviously, I planted those out ages ago, so I can't show you that bit of the process. But I did something similar to some willows the other day, although that was a slightly different story. I think I mentioned in an earlier video that I've planted hundreds of willow trees, bushes, shrubs, whatever you call them, around at the bottom of the garden to try and start a fence or a hedge going. Turns out that squirrels really like willow. This is not helpful. You plant all the trees and then the squirrels chop them off at ground level. Now, what I didn't realise was that with willow you can pretty much make another willow with all the bits the squirrels leave lying around. So if you collect up the bits that the squirrels munch off, bring them back, stuff them in water, and they start to root. I was astonished by this, that the roots grew really quickly. I mean, it was days after putting them in water, only a couple of days, and there was hints of roots growing. And then they got bigger and bigger and bigger. So I've transplanted them out and put them into these little pots to allow them to root and grow on. And I'm basically doing the same process as I did for the brachyglottis. Is brachyglotti? I have no idea. What's the plural? Brachyglottis? Anyway, I'm doing the same sort of process, and I've mixed up this sort of mix of peat-free compost and sharp sand and a bit of loam from the garden, and they seem to like it. They grow really good root networks. I think that's the word. And with the brachyglottises, when I have transplanted those out, I mean the bases of them, the pots, are absolutely full of roots now. So I think, although they didn't do much in the way of leaves over the winter, they've thrown an awful lot of roots. I'm really impressed with that. So yes, if you've got things like that, I would thoroughly recommend cut them off, shove them in a pot, and go for it. There seems to be a trick. If you Google it and have a look, if you cut them off just below a node and then peel off a couple of leaves at the bottom, and then I think I dipped them in some. It wasn't rooting hormone. There was a sort of rooting powder, a sort of compound that is supposed to encourage root growth. I did that for the brachyglottises. I didn't bother for the willows because they'd already started sprouting roots before I put the soil around them. But so I just put them in the soil with that in my potting stuff, and then left them in the greenhouse over winter. Obviously, it's a bit warmer in here than it was outside, protected from frost and that sort of thing, and they loved it. So I've got sort of 18, 19 brachyglottis plants to plant out, and they'll be going all around the garden. They throw some really nice yellow flowers in sort of autumn, early winter, so they're a great splash of colour a bit later in the year, so I like that. It may not be a particularly sunny day, but the bluebells up in the woods are looking lovely even so. And the nice thing about these is this is a bit of gardening I don't actually have to do anything about. I just leave it alone and it just happens. These bluebells are amazing, they really are. Yeah, there's this sort of path up the middle that Dad called. Oh, come on. Can you see the deer? He's trying to work out whether to come towards me or not. Yeah, so deer, you get them occasionally around here. Fortunately, they don't seem to eat bluebells, which is nice. So, yeah, there's this strange path up the middle that Dad made for some reason. So there's no bluebells in that. But other than that, the woods are absolutely alive with them. It's gorgeous around here. That blue glow as you come through the trees and out into the light. This is one bit of gardening I don't have to put any effort into getting it right. The bluebells just kind of sort themselves out, and every year, about this time, gorgeous.